got from the library. Many of you may recognize the man in this picture. Not anyone of you seen in real life, but he's a very famous individual, 19th century European artist by the name of Vincent van Gogh. Okay, so we'll leave that up right here. Right now. Alright, I'll be speaking about how the world-renowned painter Vincent van Gogh went into a downward spiral of depression and self-destructive behavior that was compounded by his exhaustive efforts as an artist. Vincent van Gogh mutilated himself and later committed suicide. In spite of this, he was not insane, and he produced many high-quality paintings and drawings. I've researched my topic very well, several books that I read about him. I'm also an admirer of his artwork. Many of you have heard about Vincent van Gogh, which makes it pretty relevant, I'm assuming, or you've probably seen some of his artwork before. He's very famous. And I'll be discussing the main events marking Van Gogh's decline into depression and his persistence and his work in the face of such obstacles. Most of the incidents in which he removed a portion of his ear and suicide sometime later. So the first thing I'll be speaking about is Van Gogh's first and well-known self-destructive act. It was the first indicator of his unstable mental state, first manifestation of it really. It was on the 23rd of December in 1888. He cut off a portion of his left ear. He was under an extreme amount of stress from his work as an artist, and he had already done 200 paintings and 100 drawings in that year alone, and they've been very high quality. And he had a friendship with a fellow artist named Paul Gauguin, and their friendship was very strained. They argued very often. They had differing views on a lot of things. Gauguin tried to push him in a direction that he didn't want to go with his artwork. They had a pretty blowout argument that day, and Van Gogh actually threatened him with a razor. And then he ran off back to his place and cut off his ear. Next thing he did, he actually just cut off the lobe. Next thing he did was he wrapped it in newspaper and delivered it to a prostitute we'd been seeing. He was a very odd guy. The following day, he was committed to St. Paul's Hospital in Arles, France, where he was staying. This is a self-portrait of him with his ear cut off. As you can see, it's bandaged right there. And although it's, it might sound like he's insane for doing that, he's actually able to produce this, very high-quality self-portrait of himself after he'd done that. So he wasn't really insane. He was more just depressed, which was compounded by like the stress of what he was doing with his artwork at the time. By July of 1890, he had recovered from that incident, but then he fell into another deep depression, and he committed his second and final self-destructive act on the 27th of that month, July 1890. He shot himself in a farmer's field. He basically was writing a letter to his brother, but he didn't finish it. He just stuffed it into his pocket, and he walked out in his field with some painting materials. With a gun, no one knows how he got the gun for sure, because it wasn't his. And he just shot himself in the abdomen, which raises some doubts about whether or not he really wanted to kill himself, because it's not a very direct way of, kicking the bucket, shooting yourself in the gut, And so then he staggered back to his room in his inn that he was renting out, stayed there. He was discovered by his landlord in bed. Doctors were brought in to examine him, and they did. They found that he could survive the suicide attempt, but he showed no will to. He just smoked his pipe and didn't talk to anyone in bed until his brother Theo van Gogh traveled to Arles from Paris. It's like 30 miles south, I think. And they spoke most of the day that he was there. They spoke about Theo's son and wife, who Van Gogh adored very much. And then after on 1 a.m. on the 29th of July, 1890, he spoke his last words in Dutch, saying, "I wish I could go home now." And then he expired. So this is a picture of Van Gogh on his deathbed, not done by him, obviously, because he's dead, but by an onlooker. It's just, kind of a rough sketch, but it's good likeness of him. There anyway, done by, Dr. Gachet, I believe his name was. And despite committing suicide and mutilating himself, Van Gogh did not depict the description of an insane, person in the popular understanding of the term, like hearing voices and going crazy all the time. He was able to concentrate on his work, which he did, with a lot of success. I've spoken about Van Gogh's first self-destructive act, removal of his earlobe, and his suicide. The end of Van Gogh's life was early and tragic. He was only 37 years old for 4 months, despite his early demise. It was really the beginning of his fame as an artist. He died in relative obscurity, but in death his paintings were discovered, and he's a famous artist today. Which, I got a quote by him, which I find kind of interesting about that. It says, the eternal question, whether we can see the whole of life or only know a hemisphere of it before death. The sight of stars always sets me dreaming just as naively as those black dots on a map set me dreaming of tours and towns and villages. Why should these joints of light in the firmament, I wonder, be less accessible than the dark ones in the map of France? We take the train to go to Tarascon and Rouen, and we take death to go to a star. Anyway, I don't see why cholera or cancer could not be a heavenly body of locomotion like ships, buses, and trains here below. Well, if we die peacefully of old age, we make the journey on foot. It's kind of hard to tell what he's talking about, obviously. I just think it's interesting because he's talking about like making this journey after death. What do you think of it in like a spiritual sense, or not? His legacy continued and expanded after his death, which I think, that kind of is explained there. Of course, he had no way of knowing it, but it's almost like a prediction. Anyway, that's my speech. Thank you very much.
All right, Christopher, what did you think?
Your intro was good. You gave the kind of brief topic. You gave the idea of the topic, then you went into your thesis. You had a flow, you had an idea, you had a good first and second topic, and then you closed out with the quote, which I actually thought was pretty cool because it kind of explained what you were talking about, how kind of crazy he was and the demise of his fall and how he thought about life and he was obscure. I like the pictures. I like how you described that through his life and times. You spoke clearly. To me, I find a strong interest in it because I like Van Gogh, and yeah, it's very good.
Thank you.
All right, the attention device is okay. You basically have the picture that you're showing us. The topic is obviously clearly identifiable, and I thought that you set up the thesis pretty well, and there's actually a good structure or preview that comes up. The content of the presentation, I think, needs a little bit more because it's primarily narrative about the two main events there, and I think in the conclusion you get a little bit more into an additional point about his post-mortem success, and that might have been something that could have been developed a little bit more. You tell the stories well. We don't get any source citation for any of the information. I assume it came from maybe even the same book that you're showing us the pictures from. The pictures are shown adequately. I think you need a little bit more preparation on that, something that would work a little bit more smoothly. The last image that you show, the drawing of him in his deathbed, I think some people wouldn't be able to see based on the angle that you're holding the book and the way you've got it close to your body. That's part of the thing that I'm talking about when it concerns planning of the visual material. The presentation, you tend to look down and read quite a bit in the first part of the speech. I thought you were a little bit better at the end. I think you could have ended with the quote and maybe made some poignant comment about it as your conclusion instead of, that's it, that's my speech. And I thought that that was a little bit problematic. All right, thank you.